Oh, my background. Good morning, everyone. Is this it? Task force. Is it forwards for you, my background?
Sure is.
Beautiful. Lovely. Hello, everyone. Just letting everyone hop in and connect their sound. Hopefully everybody had a nice evening, and we're back for our 4th day of debating, which is pretty wild. I'm very excited about today. The bills we've got are fantastic. It's also our last day of debates, which is exciting, but I think a little bit sad too. I'm just going to run through a few things really quickly, and then we'll launch into the debate. So last night, you may or may not have seen, I sent that document that went out after training weekend. It's just the page about the structure of the debate. So if you feel like maybe you need a bit of a refresher, feel free to look at that doc. Just as a reminder, we'll hear from the main sponsor, then the main refuter, then we'll go back and forth till we've had all 6 speakers. Then the floor will open. So then other members of the refuting or sponsoring chambers will get the chance to speak. And then we will have the speaker call for the right of reply once we've run out of time to debate or we've run out of speakers. And that's when the right of reply will happen. Please also remember to, if it is your turn to speak, just wait until you've been acknowledged or called on before you go to speak. And, oh yeah, so when you would like to speak, it's best for us if you have your camera on, because we can spotlight you, because the speaker can't see you until you've been spotlighted. And when your camera's on, that means we can spotlight you. So if it's your turn, you raise your hand, you've got your camera on, we'll spotlight you. That's all on our end. So all you need to know about is just raising your hand, but that makes it easiest for us to pop you up there. If you can't switch on your camera, that's okay. Just pop a message in the chat so that we know, and we'll have to like switch through the screens and find you as quickly as we can and pin you that way. Cool. And one more reminder on that we can all only speak once. Okay. I think I've done all of the debating stuff. When you speak to the speaker, when you introduce yourself, it's best that you just say speaker. We don't gender with madam or sir or Mr. or anything like that. We can just say speaker, the same way that we're trying to use super gender neutral language with one another. And today we have Hansard with us. So they're going to be typing out the things that we're saying, making a record of the things that we're saying, which is really exciting. That means that okay, cool. That means that if you're speaking today, if you have a prepared speech, please send your notes to the training email. I'll make sure that gets sent to your chambers so that you have that. And yeah, if you're speaking today, send those to us so that we can make sure that Hansard knows what you're saying and that they can use that to record your speeches. And I think all I have left is 2 things. One of them is that, oh, sorry, I'll turn off my Discord notifications. One of them is that if you need a hand, if you need a break, if you need a breath, we've got our welfare Zoom open. As always, please don't be afraid to use that. It's there for you. So you're always welcome to hop on in there. And the only other thing I wanted to mention, sorry, I know I've been talking for so long. The only other thing I wanted to mention was that for the debate we've got this morning, I just wanted to express immense gratitude to the team who are refuting the bill, because they mostly have signed up either yesterday or today and have read through the bill quick, fast, and have prepared arguments and speeches. And it's been the quickest turnaround in bill writing, debate writing I've ever seen. And, you know, we've had a lot of chats about how to be able to make a debate like this work and to be able to put a great bill on show for everyone, the best thing we can do is have refuters for it. And that's what they're here to do. They're here to support the sponsors by giving them a chance to show off their bill, speak for their bill. So that's why they're here. So just huge gratitude for them, and also just be mindful that this has just recently been put together. So if you feel like maybe there might be things that are missing or things that you would prefer to look a different way, they've done their best, and I think they've done really phenomenally. I've just seen something in the chat which made me think maybe is a good idea. If you are in the government, if you're in Kyra's chamber, maybe if you want to pop gov in your screen name, that would be really handy. And if you're in the opposition, if you want to pop op in there, so that way we can just make sure that we are getting the back and forth between sponsor and refuted chambers. That would be great. So like an example would be, whose name am I looking at? Is this Charlie's? Where it says gov in brackets and then your name. Yeah, cool. I'm seeing them pop up. Awesome. That's super handy. Okay. Yeah, Gemma, I know, but it's okay. They said it's fine. Task Force, have I forgotten anything? Surely not in my 15-minute monologue. I can't imagine I would have forgotten anything. Okay, lovely. Oh, yeah, Meeks. Sorry, was that just encouraging?
No, you've killed it. It's perfect.
Amazing. Thank you.
Faulted.
Love it, love it, love it. Thank you. So now I'm going to do an acknowledgement of country. So I want to acknowledge that I'm on Boon Wurrung land, and I want to pay my respects to Boon Wurrung elders past, present and emerging. And I would like to invite all of you to extend respects to the elders of the country that you might be occupying wherever you are. And for all of us who are in Australia, we are all occupying sovereign Aboriginal land. So I want to recognise that. And finally, I want to extend those respects as well to any First Nations people who might be with us in debate, or who might be joining us via our live stream, which looks like it's running, but I can never be certain. Lovely. With all of that said, I'm just going to give Brad a moment to introduce himself. Brad, would you like to say hello to our parliamentarians?
Good morning, honourable members. Thanks very much, Ali. Great intro, mate. My name's Brad. I'm the state member for Sandringham, and as I understand, I'm the only member of the Victorian Parliament who's previously completed the Victorian Youth Parliament program. So, which has been awesome. And I remember back to my time at Parley, and not just as a member of the Victorian Youth Parliament, but I went up and did the national one in Canberra as well, really, really fondly. I met some really great people, had an opportunity to debate and to discuss some things that were, pretty topical, continue to be topical as well. And it was absolutely amazing. So just a little bit about me. Aside from being a member of Parliament, I'm a dad. I've got a couple of kids, and they're amazing. I've got a 4-year-old girl and a 18-month-old son. I'm married to Kate, who's a wonderful, wonderful person. And yes, I'm a member of Parliament. It's my first term. I'm the youngest member of the Liberal Party party room at the tender age of 35. I know that seems really old, but in the scheme of things, that's not old. I still feel really, really young. Yeah, I represent the Sandringham district, which is in the south of Melbourne. It's a Bayside seat. It's an amazing place. If you haven't come down here, when you can, out of your 5 or 10K zones, pop down and enjoy the beach and grab some fish and chips and enjoy the sunshine during summer as well. The thing that actually drove me and drives me to be a member of Parliament is the opportunity to help other people. I mean, that's my foundation. That's who I am. That's what I've tried to do in my professional life, is just to seek an opportunity to help other people. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning. That's what sustains me in doing this job now. And it's a real privilege, a real humble privilege, actually. So I think it's just amazing that so many young people continue to participate in this wonderful, wonderful YMCA program. I really do, to engage in ideas, to critically think through things, to put together your speeches and your arguments and do so in a really respectful way. Kudos to you for doing that, and thank you for doing that. I think it's just so important that young people participate actively in our democratic system and democratic processes, and you guys are doing that through and through by your participation today in this program, and that's awesome. Well done. And looking forward to sharing debate this morning. Thanks, Ellie.
Thanks very much. And I think that's all there is to be said. So, Sarah, would you like to introduce the bill for us?
I would. The first order of the day today is Neurodiversity Education in Schools Bill 2021.
I call on the sponsor of the bill. The sponsor, the Honourable Member Deo.
Speaker, the Honourable Member Deo. I move to introduce a bill titled Neurodiversity Education in Schools Bill 2021.
The question is that the bill now be read a first time. All those of that opinion say aye. To the contrary, no. There are many, many ayes. The ayes have it.
I move that the bill now be read a second time. I'd first like to address the term neurodiversity. Neurodiversity traditionally refers to the difference between each individual's brain. It was only recently coined by Judy Singer to specifically encompass conditions such as autism, dyslexia, and ADHD. The sponsors wish to use the term neurodiversity in the same sense as Judy Singer. Neurodiversity is neither bad nor good, just different. On the other hand, the term neurotypical is used to describe the majority of individuals who do not experience a difference within their cognitive development. We recognise that Victoria's education system puts all students on the same course of education, despite the fact that neurotypical and neurodiverse students have different strengths and learning styles. However, the education system uses a one-size-fits-all approach that suits only the majority of students. In doing so, it denies neurodiverse students the right to learn how they learn. We already have the Victorian Certificate of Applied Learning, or VCAL, to support students who thrive with hands-on learning. It's time we developed a learning environment that caters sufficiently for neurodiverse students. The bill to increase neurodiversity education in schools addresses this issue and strives for inclusion. Inclusion meaning that adjustments will be made for each student to be able to learn how they learn. Inclusion being the standard and expectation within all Victorian schools. This allows neurodiverse students to be able to participate without being spotlighted and feeling different. The first step the bill takes to promote inclusion is representing the neurodiverse community so that they are heard and appropriately catered for. Because we greatly believe in the phrase, nothing about us without us, as stated by Anita Ahern, the founder of Kids on the Spectrum, the Australian Autism Directory. The sponsor team itself has a range of lived experiences with neurodiversity. Anita Ahern believes that current strategies, such as the National Disability Insurance Scheme, fail to appropriately meet the needs of Australians with a disability, mainly because the National Disability Insurance Agency lacks lived experiences with disability and does not fully understand what the community demands. As mentioned in Clause 4 of the bill, the Victorian Neurodiversity Educational Body will compose of neurodiverse representatives from the Neurodiversity Hub. This ensures that neurodiverse students are able to contribute to the decision-making that aims to improve the learning environment of other neurodiverse students. In addition, the body will include a representative from Inclusive Classrooms, a professional development program that supports educators in diversifying classrooms. A representative from Inclusive Classrooms will endeavour to create the most concise and accurate professional development programs for primary and secondary school teachers, thus aiming to relieve any extra pressure that may be put on teachers through the new requirements should this bill proceed. Additionally, the bill allows for strategies to target both teachers and students in primary and secondary schools, as well as strategies to implement in classroom settings. This is evident in clauses 5, 6, and 7. These strategies directly combat the stigma surrounding neurodiversity and allow neurodiverse students to feel safe and supported in the classroom. Clause 8 of the bill also states that the body shall conduct regular audits of schools to ensure that they are adequately diversifying the learning environment. Audits will be conducted every 2 years, and feedback will be obtained from neurodiverse students in particular. Therefore, the body will be able to identify strengths and weaknesses with current strategies, and improvements can be made. Ultimately, the bill to increase neurodiversity education in schools makes adjustments to the learning track in which students are placed upon. This makes the finish line that students are expected to reach achievable for all. I now urge the House to consider whether or not they wish to continue pushing neurodiverse students to conform with the learning styles of their neurotypical peers, or if we all agree that normalising difference is a milestone that is worth moving towards. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Are there further speakers on the bill? Yes. Honourable Member Asita. Thank you.
Speaker, the Honourable Member Aseta. Speaker and members of the Assembly, we do not refute the necessity of a more understanding community of the neurodiverse. However, and heavy emphasis on the however, we will not stand idly by and watch a bill constructed upon the foundation of strong moral principle be built up by frail and vulnerable implementation. I speak on behalf of the government when I say that we acknowledge the neurodiverse community and seek to give them the best we can. However, this bill just is not that. The bill, Speaker, is flawful, impractical, and reckless across many fronts. The biggest and most obvious instance is the failure to clearly define what neurodiversity is. Now, the previous speaker before me did touch upon this, but in the bill, it defines neurodiversity as the variation in the human brain regarding sociability, learning, attention, mood, and other mental functions in a non-pathological sense. This is a blanket statement, not at all representative of their arguments or legislation, and yet it is the main point of it. The term neurodiversity, whilst it does account for the variation in the human brain, which the bill defines it as, is much more than that. Australian sociologist Judy Singer, who coined the term in the 1990s, stated recently that neurodiversity is three main things. It is a state of nature to be respected, it is an analytical tool for examining social issues, and it is an argument for the conservation and facilitation of human diversity. Therefore, neurodiversity is a way of thinking about neurological variations as variations from the typical population rather than a disability. It is further stated that neurodiversity is not a characteristic of the individuals in that population, thus disputing the listed characteristics in the definition of the key and most important term of the bill. Speaker and honourable members, need I have to emphasize that the definitions need to be the utmost refined and coherent sections of the bills. If we cannot simply define the main concept of our bills, how is it to be trusted the rest of the bill will make any more sense? However, I will put the famous saying into practice where we may truly not judge a book by its cover, now more than ever. Hence, I will now touch on the bill's burdensome reliance on teachers and education providers. I've counted a number of 8 times where the words "the teacher shall" all in one clause. Why is that? Speaker and honourable members, I ask that you all remember that figure in clause 6 as I read out the following. Recently, the Australian Education Union conducted a survey of more than 10,000 Victorian teaching staff, including principals and support staff, that revealed 84% think that their school is under-resourced and that many were working an average of 15 hours of unpaid overtime a week. According to the survey, 85% of staff said their work-related stress had increased significantly in the last 12 months. Now, with this figure in mind, does the added stress and enforced responsibility seem in any sense feasible? Speaker, honourable members, the following refuting members will prove the government's point of having an issue with the execution process and not the overall ideology. I ask the honourable members to genuinely consider if this is the best that we can do for our young people. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member Aseta. Do we have any further speakers on the bill? Yes, the Honourable Member Hackett has the call. Thank you, Honourable Member.
Speaker, the Honourable Member Hackett. I am autistic. I was diagnosed much later than I should have been because it was never picked up. I was simply the quirky, unique, different kid in school. I was called wise beyond my years, but I was also called difficult to understand. This was because of the lack of education surrounding autism in females specifically. Neurologists have proven that autism, as well as some other neurological conditions, have gendered phenotypes, meaning that boys and girls present their traits differently. If this was common knowledge, then maybe I would have been diagnosed earlier, making my schooling years much easier for me than they really were. I am an educator. I have worked at schools where neurodiversity is treated as a hindrance on the success of other students. I've witnessed an educator directly tell a student that they will amount to nothing because they never followed directions and they continue to make a fuss. As a student, I would sit one-on-one with some of my friends who were struggling with the content, and I would teach them myself because the teachers didn't know how to accommodate for the students themselves. I now work in a school that is specifically for young people who don't fit the typical mold of what a mainstream student looks like, whatever that's supposed to mean, and it's so inspiring. Our proposed Victorian neurodiversity educational body will help students and educators to better understand the needs and wishes of our neurodiverse students. We've incorporated both overarching institutions who will guide the process and smaller organisations who will guide the content as they represent the neurodiverse community. Anita Ahern once said, "Nothing about us without us." And members of the House, that is exactly what we aim with this body and this bill. By including first-hand knowledge, expertise, and experience, we can guarantee that things will be done right and that neurodiverse students and educators like myself do not need to bear the weight of educating people themselves. This is a positive step to upholding justice and equality for the Victorian neurodiverse community. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member Hackett, as well. Are there any further speakers on the bill? Yes, we have the Honourable Member whose name I can't see just for the time being. Hold on. You're about to come up on the screen. Yes, the Honourable Member Saunders. The call is yours. Thank you.
Speaker, the Honourable Member Saunders. The term neurodiversity, as defined by this bill, is variations in the human brain relating to mental functions. And this encompasses a broad range of cognitive impairments and illnesses, including but not limited to autism, ADHD, and dyslexia. While the opposition has demonstrated that they are well aware of this, their bill does not convey the same level of understanding. Neurodivergent individuals, by the very nature of their being neurodivergent, do not learn in the same way as neurotypicals, or indeed in the same way as other neurodiverse people. As such, many different learning styles are required to adequately meet the needs of all neurodivergent individuals in the Victorian school system. This bill does not provide enough variation in the alternative ways neurodiverse students can learn. Clause 7, subsection 7.2 lists specific ways of assisting neurodiverse students in their learning, but it is too specific and does not encompass all alternative learning options used or needed by neurodivergent individuals. In addition, this bill does not specify how it will help students learn from home environments and outside the classroom. Particularly important at the moment when lockdown is ongoing and remote learning is to continue next term, it is important neurodivergent students have the support they need to study at home and away from the school classroom. While it is harder for teachers to regulate outside the classroom, it is also sometimes harder for neurodiverse people to study and focus when not in the structured learning environment. Just because they are not in the classroom does not mean these students should be deprived of the opportunities to study in the way that suits them best. Therefore, while this bill raises the right ideas of discussion for neurodiverse students, it does not help all neurodivergent individuals in the schooling system, leaving some to fall behind even their neurodiverse peers. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member Saunders. A worthy contribution. The next speaker is the Honourable Member Jong. You have the call.
Speaker, the Honourable Member Dong. Before I speak, this speech will discuss experiences of ableism and there will be mentions of sexualization and may be challenging or triggering for some people. If they feel concerned about the content, youth parliamentarians and members of the gallery are encouraged to step out or mute their volume and return in a few minutes' time. This will be extremely crucial to the lives of neurodiverse individuals, and here's why. When I was in primary school, I was judged for being weird, being different to what people in our society call normal. It started when I asked one of my primary school teachers to tie a shoelace for me in year 3 because I never knew how to tie a shoelace. She did. However, she humiliated me in front of the whole class, shaming me for not learning how to tie a shoelace earlier, but I was only 8 and did not know what to do. I also cannot stand the amount of inappropriate interactions with neurodiverse individuals, including me, and the amount of people that tolerate it. Most days, whenever I'm in school, I always hear derogatory terms casually thrown around, sexualization of neurodiverse individuals, and ignorance on how we live. Here is why the curriculum proposed in the bill will benefit children across Victoria. The curriculum that will be set by the bill under Clause 5 will promote inclusion in classrooms. We need to normalize neurodiverse students provided with needs in classrooms instead of seeing the difference that someone else needs more comfort than others. We are aiming to educate both neurotypical and neurodiverse individuals because the barriers between both are already visible in classrooms. Thus, this bill will ensure that the barriers are removed. Think of someone that is wearing noise-cancelling headphones. Our current society will think that they are loners, isolating, and the question to that would be, why are they engaging in wearing headphones in class? Instead of confusion from neurotypical people, this bill will break down stigma into pieces and the curriculum will reduce that confusion. Thank you for listening, Speaker.
No, thank you for contributing, Honourable Member Tong. Are there any further speakers on the bill? Yes, the Honourable Member Vernon, you have the call.
Apologies, Speaker, the Honourable Member Vernon. While I acknowledge that this bill has good intentions, this bill needs to be rewritten for the clarity of everyone before passing. In Clause 8.1, the opposition states that there will be an audit every 2 years. Now, with myself having a large neurodiverse family in mind, 2 years is not enough time. To make sure that schools are following everything to a T, again, 2 years is not enough. Instead, we propose 1 year to make sure the neurodiverse children and teenagers of Victoria are getting the support that they deserve and need. In those 2 years, if the time of the audits went ahead, then the school kids could have their learning jeopardised from the lack of time that the Victorian neuroeducation body could be spent in a single year. In these audits, how will it be measured whether schools are implementing the inclusive initiatives? Does this bill really deliver on its intentions? How can we trust schools and teachers who are already overworked to follow this through without it being measurable? How about those who are nonverbal and are unable to communicate with others? Clause 1B also states that one of the main purposes is that to prevent any further ableist discrimination and prejudice. But freedom of speech clearly states that this point of the bill cannot go into action. Laws cannot dictate personal opinion, though we wish. Clause 7.2a, while it may be accurate, privilege surely can't be used in a law like this. This bill has been created with good intentions, but more clarity and consideration needs to be put in place before passing. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member Vernon. The next speaker is the Honourable Member Campitelli-Slee. You have the call.
Speaker, the Honourable Member Campitelli-Slee. 38.6% of neurodiverse people are considered unemployable or are unemployed. This figure is staggeringly high and raises the question as to how teachers and educators could better facilitate learning for neurodiverse young people. Sometimes neurodiverse people experience what is known as school refusal, which encompasses feelings of alienation, isolation, and unhappiness associated with attending school or being in a classroom. It can be caused by many factors, such as feeling that teachers are not accepting of who you are or how you learn. This disconnect from school can have long-term ramifications, including unemployment, as I mentioned before.
Clause 6 of the Neurodiversity in Education Schools Bill 2021 outlines the professional development training that will be established and distributed by the Neurodiversity Educational Body to schools around Victoria. The 5 priority actions of these PD courses include providing and valuing relationships between staff and students, building on developing agency, supporting students to understand and manage their own behaviour, creating inclusive environments, and embedding inclusive teaching strategies. The opposition believe that the education of teachers on neurodiversity is imperative to ensuring Victorian schools move towards the inclusion of all students' abilities. The Honourable Member Aseta said teachers were feeling overworked, yet our bill means educators will feel they have the necessary skills and understanding to differentiate their teaching by undertaking neurodiversity inclusivity measures, such as providing specific explicit classroom instructions, detailed schedules, and quieter testing environments, as well as others listed under Clause 7. By supplying teachers the resources and strategies they need to implement change into their classrooms, inclusive education will be at the forefront of how young people learn and grow in Victoria. The opposition urges the government to support this bill. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Are there further speakers on this bill? Yes, the Honourable Member O'Connell, you have the call.
Speaker, the Honourable Member O'Connell. Before I start my speech, I'd just like to put out a trigger warning, as this speech will be mentioning mental health issues and self-image. So feel free to mute me or step out while I present the speech and return in a few minutes. Thank you. Although the opposition's bill is of good merit and intends to reduce the gap between what makes people different and allows individuals to learn in unity in neurodiverse education systems, it however does not and has many flaws, and although the idea is great, it is not practical in any sense. To expand on the issue at hand, it is that individuals with cognitive impairments will be disadvantaged and ultimately cause mental health issues such as depression, forms of anxiety, and poor self-image, as people learn differently and may feel as though they aren't good enough or worthy, therefore causing issues with mental health and, of course, as I said, self-image. That's why alternative learning settings such as specialist schools are created to assist our neurodiverse students, to cater for young people with cognitive impairments and allow them to learn in an environment where they can feel safe, happy, and without the stigma of feeling as though they are different and not enough. This bill is brilliant on paper, but in a practical sense, it will never work to the extent that our opposition wants it to. As I have already said, this neurodiverse schooling system will have detrimental effects on our neurodiverse students in their mental health and growth. As we grow up in a school, is in fact the place we spend most of our time. And if our neurodiverse students who have different capabilities and learning styles are put with people who also have different learning styles and are not on the neurodiverse spectrum, it will cause mental health issues and make them feel as they're not enough. It is our government's job to protect our people and keep them safe and happy in their time of being in the education system. And although the neurodiverse schooling system is intended to make people feel as though that no matter what their circumstances are, they're enough, but in the same time, in essence, this will do the complete opposite for our youth. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member O'Connell. Is there any other honourable members that would like to address the bill? Yes, the Honourable Member Regnino.
Speaker, the Honourable Member Regina. Neurodiversity, it is neither bad nor good, just different. As spoken by Anita here, the co-founder of Kids on the Spectrum, the Hoppers Crossing Secondary College, were in a stakeholder meeting with her. This, unfortunately, was not what I was conditioned to think while growing up with sensory issues as an autistic student. The lack of education in school systems on neurodiversity is extremely sad. While growing up, having to deal with exclusion and discrimination for not having the same
Honourable Member, I think we're having some technical difficulties hearing your contribution, such is the Zoom. We might. Honourable Member,
from the lack of education.
Honourable Member, we will come back to you. Are there any further speakers, perhaps a government speaker on the bill? Is there another? The Honourable Member St Petrie, you have the call.
Speaker, the Honourable Member St Pierre.
St Pierre, forgive me, sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. This bill is extremely inclusive, and that is amazing. But we need to consider the upgrades to the normal educational system first. A lot of people are disappointed with the current courses and schools and want to receive an upgrade. Why include neurodiversity so soon before the rest is fixed first? It's similar to putting a bandage on a lost limb. It's pointless at the moment as it is not one of the priorities. And why would we replace an existing educational support that helps the others fit in with our peers? Implementing this bill would separate and discriminate against a student who's already suffering from possible issues. They may not be able to fit in with the rest of the students. Before we sign up to this bill, we need to learn about how exactly the professional development programs and curriculum will be implemented. It is currently unclear in the bill, meaning that we are unclear on the nitty-gritty. Unfortunately, I don't like how unclear this bill is. When are professional development courses meant to happen? How long? Are they compulsory? Do they need to be refreshed? All of those are questions that this bill fails to answer. It needs to be outlined that all of the mistakes this bill includes would mean plenty of loopholes, plenty of errors, and overall would completely override the purpose of the bill. Before implementing it, we need to revise and upgrade it. I call upon the opposition to revise their bill and pass it in the future when it has been revised. Lastly, no one deserves to be discriminated against, and this bill ensures that it would happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Now, we might just see if the Honourable Member Reginio is available again. You there? Terrific. Just hoping you have a better connection. You have the call.
Okay. Speaker, the Honourable Member Reginio. Neurodiversity. It is neither bad nor good, just different. As spoken by Anita, the co-founder of Kids on the Spectrum, while the Hoppers Crossing Secondary College team were in a stakeholder meeting with her. This unfortunately was not what I was conditioned to think while growing up with sensory issues as an autistic student. The lack of education in school systems on neurodiversity is extremely sad. While growing up, having to deal with exclusion and discrimination for not having the same boundaries as my peers, I've personally felt the harsh impacts from the lack of education on neurodiversity from neurotypical individuals. Only a few teachers in my schooling life had taken the extra courses that aren't mandatory were educated on neurodiversity. Additionally, only because of these few teachers have I been able to learn how to navigate my school life in a comfortable manner for me. There are many benefits of multidimensional education on neurodiversity. If students, parents, and carers were to all be adequately educated on neurodiversity, it would be a massive step in the right direction to help normalize differences among all people. By starting with educating teachers on neurodiversity, they can be the start of creating a safer environment for all students and their needs. As the teachers learn more through their PDs, they can relay the information learnt into their classrooms. It is evident that the multidimensional approach of education stated in our bill would go a long way in allowing Victorians, from children to adults, to make the necessary changes that will make our state more inclusive for not only neurodiverse students, but also for neurodiverse people in their school environment. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Is there another speaker from the government who wishes to address this bill? There should theoretically be one more speaker from the government. Thank you, Honourable Member Cook. You have the call.
Speaker, the Honourable Member Cook. Clause 4, subsection 4.3 says the body shall reserve the right to implement compulsory inclusivity measures into classrooms relating to neurodiversities. Where does the school system fit in here, and how is the forced implementation of compulsory inclusivity supposed to achieve the main aim of raising awareness? Furthermore, Nowhere in the bill is the academic performance or benefits clearly measured or outlined as an outcome of the implementation. The lack of evidence can only beg the question of its profitability for the neurodivergent, and the future implementation also. Why should a bill pass if its results are going to be unpredictable or unprofitable? Since the bill is targeted towards helping kids and young people, could clearly be represented in the board / could there be a conclusive process with neurodiverse young people in the creation of diversionary programs, etc. Speaker, honourable members, we the government do understand the climate of importance that neurodiversity provides in any environment. However, the bill does not provide enough clarity, justification, or justice to the meaning of the words neurodivergent. Thank you.
Thank you, the Honourable Member Cook. I understand that the Honourable Member Garcia has the call.
Speaker, the Honourable Member Garcia. Before getting diagnosed with ADHD, I tried to seek guidance through a school counsellor. After being told that they had very little knowledge of the disorder, they went on to tell me that they didn't think I had it. And even though I had spent weeks researching ADHD, their uneducated opinion had stuck with me. It caused me to feel like I was faking it. And even to this day, their words hang in the back of my head and make me second guess everything. I wish that was not a common feeling amongst other neurodiverse students, but I know that's just not the reality. There is a severe lack of proper education on neurodiversities within school communities, and this has detrimental impacts on neurodiverse students and their mental health. One of the best ways to combat this is through proper education. Education this bill will provide and make mandatory for all staff and students. Did you know that an autistic person is 4 times more likely to suffer from depression than a neurotypical person? It is extremely common for a neurodiverse person to suffer from mental illnesses such as depression and anxiety. This is largely due to alienation from a young age, the implicit and explicit ableism that is so normalized to this day, on top of the general need to conform to a neurotypical society that further excludes us. A review of the Disability Standards for Education Act 2005 was conducted last year and contained numerous accounts of neurodiverse students calling for more education on neurodiversities within their school communities. They knew that learning was the key to building respectful relationships and breaking down the barriers that students have to face at school every single day. This bill will work towards a more inclusive space so all neurodiverse students, both diagnosed and undiagnosed, are believed and included. I'm asking everyone here today to help in this fight and support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member, and thank you to all the Honourable Members who have so far made a worthy contribution, respectful contribution to the debate. Are there any further members who are seeking the call to make a contribution to this debate? The Honourable Member Coe, you have the call.
Speaker, the Honourable Member Coe. As a neurodivergent individual myself, I experienced an education where throughout my primary school, I was taught in an environment that helped me and guided me and supported me through my time of learning. I was identified as a gifted child. And in my start of high school, I was seen as someone with a lot of potential. However, as high school progressed, I began running into issues of quoted short attention span, interrupting in class, and not paying attention. It turns out that I had undiagnosed ADHD. The opposition has attempted to improve inclusivity within the educational system. However, they have not addressed the underlying issues of the educational system itself. The rigidity of the educational system means that even if teachers tried to be flexible with their students, they would come into backlogs with needing to meet deadlines in places such as BCE and BCAL for exams. There is also the issue of teachers already being overworked. We acknowledge that the idea of a PD is a good idea. However, the number of PDs that schools and teachers can already choose from is already overwhelming. How do we expect them to choose neurodiversity out of the other important PDs such as cultural inclusivity and respectful relationships? Furthermore, would it not be better to also reduce classroom sizes so that teachers can better work with their students? This bill does not correct the current issue. It just attempts to put a band-aid over the wound. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Thinking and contributing on your feet. Well done. Are there any further people who wish to contribute to this bill? The Honourable Member Noble, you have the call.
Speaker, the Honourable Member Noble. This is an issue that must be addressed. Last year, a review into the Disability Standards for Education Act 2005 was conducted and highlighted many neurodiverse students calling for change. If we are hearing from neurodivergent students themselves that our education system is inadequate, then we must take this seriously and must act. The government said that this will perpetuate low efficacy and could make people feel different. This bill is being argued by those members considered neurodivergent, recognizing that they are different and that they need attention that is different from in a normal classroom. We have to recognize that neurodivergence includes a huge range of people and that specialist schools are often reserved for those considered with more severe conditions. Neurodivergent students should be accommodated within our schooling system instead of being shunted off to the side. The government cannot say that the small separation of students within this bill is an issue and then recommend specialist schools as the solution. This bill is calling for inclusivity rather than higher academic scores, and I agree with it, and it must be passed.
Thank you, Honourable Member Noble. Are there any further speakers on this bill? Any further contributions? I now call on the sponsor of the bill for their right of reply. Thank you, Honourable Member Deo.
Speaker, the Honourable Member Deo. I will again reinforce the term neurodiversity. If the refuters recognise that the term neurodiversity encompasses all individuals' brains, why is the current education system not providing enough for students who have conditions like autism, dyslexia, and ADHD? As previously stated, we use the term in the same sense as Judy said. We have chosen to define neurodiversity in the way we have to make it clear who exactly we refer to. The inclusive, might I emphasize, classroom strategies are tailored to use in the classroom to empower neurodiverse students. They are obviously not suitable in remote learning, as most of the problems occur in face-to-face learning where they are obviously marginalized. Ableism is not freedom of speech, nor is it opinion. We will not justify any freedom of speech or opinions intended to harm other students. Audits every 2 years allow the Victorian Neurodiversity Educational Body to determine the long-term effects of the strategies implemented. Now, is stigma not what causes mental health issues for the neurodiverse? Strategies directly aim to reduce the stigma and increase the sense of belonging felt by neurodiverse students. We prefer that these changes be implemented in mainstream schools rather than specialist schools because there aren't many specialist departments for life itself, like employment as such. There is no monetary value nor academic value through the implementation of the bill, as it is aimed at supporting neurodiverse students through the course of their lives. There are so many opportunities for schools to implement the curriculum. Personally, Hoppers Crossing Secondary College provides sessions for education on driving, drug use, and healthy and respectful relationships. This bill allows students to run their own races to the finish line in completing their education. Once more, I call upon the House to ponder the importance of inclusion and now decide on whether or not we are ready to offer this to neurodiverse students. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member Deo, for your contribution. The question is that the Neurodiversity Education in Schools Bill 2021 now be read a second and a third time. All those of that opinion say aye, and to the contrary, no. We'll just pause briefly while you vote. I think the ayes have it. Yes, this is a conscience vote. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Right. Well, that's terrific. Can I just say, from my perspective, yeah, well done. Claps all round for everyone who participated this morning. Can I just say, from my perspective, I was just so impressed by the level of contribution that everyone made this morning. The way that people went through their arguments for and against the bill in a constructive and a productive but a respectful way as well. I think that's very, very important. And that was done very, very well. For my own part, having been a former participant of the Victorian Youth Parliament, the first time that I had the opportunity to speak in the chamber, in the Legislative Assembly chamber of the Victorian Parliament, wasn't in fact when I was an elected member of Parliament. It was when I was the leader of the opposition in the Victorian Youth Parliament. And so I had a few runs on the board before actually getting there as an elected member of Parliament, and it was wonderful. So I am really, really sorry that you guys haven't had the opportunity to do this in person in the chamber, because it's an amazing opportunity, an amazing thing to do. Look, when I first started about 3 years or so ago as an MP, what I do is write down every single word of my speech, rehearse it a couple of times, head into the chamber and deliver it sort of word for word. As I've become not complacent, but a little bit more, I guess, experienced in delivering speeches in the chamber, especially longer speeches. I'm talking sort of 10-minute speeches, 15-minute speeches. I've delivered a couple of 30-minute speeches in the chamber on various pieces of legislation, very technical pieces of legislation. My strong preference now is to go in prepared with a whole bunch of notes that I can refer to, with a list of things that I want to cover off. And instead of speaking from the notes, word for word, I speak to the notes. So I use them as a prompt and they're reference points throughout. So I think, there are different speaking styles and different ways that, people feel comfortable making contributions, but that's what makes sense for me. Hey, once again, congratulations. And thank you so much for having me and for the opportunity to contribute and participate. I love the Youth Parliament. It's where I've come from, and I really encourage you to continue engaging in our democracy, especially at this time, please. Some people around the Zoom today may be able to vote already. That's awesome. A lot of you won't, but that doesn't mean that your opinion is any less valued or any less valuable. So congratulations to those who proposed the bill in the first place. Congratulations on it passing the Victorian Youth Parliament, and enjoy the rest of the time that you have together.
Thank you so much, Brad. I will speak, but do we have a question or something to share?
Just like to say something. I just want to say a big thank you to the refuting side. I know it was hard. You have pretty much just seen the bill, but your arguments were great. It was an amazing experience to debate against you. And I'd like to say I'm so proud of the Hoppers team as well, and Ollie Hackett for volunteering to speak with us. We have all worked so hard for this bill and our speeches. We've done our own meetings just to build our confidence, and we've done amazing. The Honourable Member Asita and Vernon, you guys spoke so very well, and you had great arguments for us as well. And I'd just like to say good job to the House, especially for the people that spoke when the floor opened. And yeah, thank you.
That's a beautiful sentiment. Thank you for sharing. Do we have another comment as well?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just so shocked that when I was like looking through who voted like ayes or noes, like literally like it was overwhelmed with ayes, and then I was like so surprised. Like, oh my God, thank you so much, guys. That's all I wanted to say.